day. It all comes down, you know, the budget is an expression of values. No
Right.
question about it. And it was beginning to be transformational in K-12. We're going to have some challenging times. Maurice, what's a big but achievable idea?
I do think funding is big and achievable. I think we're at a point now that we can't, at the local, state, and federal level, just say we have to have cuts in education. When we think about what's happening with our young people, understanding that they're the next generation, it is unacceptable for us to not move money to the spaces of critical need. I think the sort of big but achievable idea, keeping people at the center, is to ensure that teachers have the mental health and wellness support that they need for our young people. Like John said earlier, Dr. King said earlier, they are holding the relationships, and the schools are a part of the community. So not just what do we add on, but really, really, how do we support people with building stronger relationships with young people? I think that at the end of the day will help us to serve them better, in addition to the funding. And to continue to expand supports for our homeless and student and temporary living situations who have been most hard hit economically, as well as in the terms of the health outcomes as well. So I think those are things that we can do now.
Constance, big, bold, achievable.
Yeah, I'm going to proudly jump on this bandwagon of resources. It's how I started, is what you just heard. And there's something to be said about that, why we're saying that. But I'm also going to give you an idea connected to resources. So 5 years ago, we launched this scholarship and mentorship program for undocumented students. It was called the Pritzker Access Scholarship Program. And it was designed to provide funding for those students, undocumented students, to attend a four-year college or university because they can't get federal aid. So most of them end up not going to a four-year college or university. Okay, so 4 years later, we just had our first cohort graduate. This is a population where typically the graduation rate for college is in the teens. In 4 years, we had over 60% of them graduate from college, and that's still going up as we go into the 5th year and the 6th year. Okay, so we know it's possible with the right resources and opportunity and with the right mentorship and support. What I'm working on now is doing that with our Black males, with our Black students, securing funding to provide the same opportunity in terms of scholarships, but also in terms of intense mentorship throughout their 4 years of college to get them across the finish line of college. If people put their resources toward our Black males in this way, I know that our college graduation rates could go up.
All right, John.
Great. I'm going to cheat and say two. One is early childhood education. I just think the evidence is very clear that you can get an 8-to-1, 9-to-1 return on investment for dollars that are invested with our babies. And so we should make sure that 0 to 4, there is high quality early childhood care and education available to every kid. It means not only investing, but investing in particular in the workforce, which is overwhelmingly made up of women of color. We ought to invest in that workforce, that early childhood workforce, to make sure that they can provide the supports our kids need. The second, given that it's Juneteenth, I just have to say, I think we'd be a stronger country if we had a curriculum in all of our schools that made sure that all students have an appreciation for the truth of our history, and that we would grapple in our curricula with the role that institutional racism has played in our history as a country, and also present Black excellence, Black authors, Black leaders, Black accomplishments. And again, not just to students of color, but to all students. All students need to see windows and mirrors in the curriculum. All students need to have an appreciation for America's potential and where we've fallen short of that potential.
Well, I really appreciate it. I can see that we're going to be transitioning out. I really want to thank you for joining us. We have huge short-term issues and we have equally significant long-term ones. Really appreciate the creative ideas that you've offered on both, as well as your ongoing commitment to this work generally. So thank you so much for joining us. Constance Jones, Marie Swinney, Z. Scott, and John King.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
See you.
Thank you. Thank you to all of our esteemed panelists, and thank you, Robin, for leading and excellent discussion. And thank you especially for all of the work that each and every one of you does with educational equity. That is so important for our present and our future. So this concludes our summit. But as is the case, there are summits after the summit. In fact, we are going to have 3 more events during the course of the day that we hope will fuel you for the work that we all have to roll up our sleeves and do. What are those summits? First, we'll have the Impact Summit. And this is the annual convening of our Impact Fellows. The Impact Fellows program is a program for civic and professional development for young Black professionals who want to not only do well in their professions, but they want to be active in our community. And then we'll have the Woke Summit. Just a few minutes ago, I heard the music bumping as our Woke DJ prepares for that summit that allows small businesses to have discussions, to encourage each other, and to gain knowledge about growing their businesses in our community. And then we're going to have a discussion about the future of work. And so our Department of Workforce Development and Employment is going to talk about those jobs, those careers that will be emerging as we see the landscape of work changing in our community. And then we'll have a discussion on housing and access to capital. We know that WBEZ just did an important article and a study of lending in the Chicago community. We have the opportunity to have a robust discussion about housing, and it is sponsored by Chase Bank. We thank you for that, but we know that this discussion is just the beginning with our banking industry, and we want you to stay tuned as we convene our banking industry, but also want to point you to a noon convening between banking executives and our city treasurer and our state treasurer. We also want you to tune in as our Woke Summit hosts a pitch competition. And so this concludes our work today, or our summit today, but it only begins our work in the community. And here's what we know, and here's what we've seen from our discussions today, and you will continue to see, is that work is going to happen on many fronts. It's going to happen at the national level, in our boardrooms, in the US Congress, and certainly in the White House. It's going to happen at our state level, in the State House, and in our local level, in City Hall, in community-based organizations, and certainly in boardrooms around this city. And while that work will take many different forms, we know that work has to be coordinated. We know that work has to divide that we have seen throughout our country. Because on Juneteenth, as we commemorate the freedom that came to Texas, specifically to Galveston, Texas, we don't want freedom to be elusive for our community any longer. Thank you for tuning in, and don't leave your computer other than to take a bathroom break, because we have more in store for you.
Is just an amazing technology, and we're so happy that we're able to bring this and share it with our students, and they get to be the first ones that really get to truly see this in a school. It's super exciting for us.
Technology gives kids so much hope into what their future can be. I had goosebumps thinking that the kids here could literally be in a virtual room with kids all around the world, learning from world-renowned physicists on how planets are formed.
Hello. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Future of Work panel discussion. My name is Andrew Wells, and I am the Director of Workforce Development of the Chicago Urban League. The Future of Work panel discusses how COVID-19 and emerging trends are rapidly shaking the workforce's future. Advancements in technology such as augmented reality, virtual assistants, remote digital teaming and conferencing, on-demand education and training, and artificial intelligence are changing the nature and structure of our individual and social interactions in every aspect of our lives. However, solving for this challenge is not an overnight effort. It calls for a macro, programmatic, and scalable approach. I would like to turn it over now to our moderator, Mr. Michael Negron, who will introduce all of the panelists today. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Andrew. I am Michael Negron. I'm the Assistant Director at the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. I am with our director, Erin Guthrie, out on maternity leave. I am in the acting director role through the end of August. So I'm delighted to be part of this panel today. A lot of important issues to discuss. As Andrew mentioned, we are in the midst of the pandemic has accelerated a lot of trends that were already happening. We are in a situation now where we really have two crises, a public health crisis and an economic downturn crisis. The combined effect of both has been to put much of at least the short term, but likely the long term as well, future of the nature of work in real question. It's accelerated trends like the demise of retail. It's accelerated the shift to automation. It's accelerated other trends, and there are sectors that are fundamentally in question. The future of hospitality, the future of tourism, the future of manufacturing, places where there are higher risks and customer behavior may have changed permanently. And so it's something that I know all the members of this panel have been working on in different ways, and so I'm delighted to be part of it. For the sake of time, I'm just going to give a short bio blurb on each, and then we'll jump right into the questions. Joining us today are Karen Larson. She is the Director of Workforce Development at Hire 360, which is a nonprofit that was created from a partnership between Chicago's largest developers, general contractors, and construction trade unions. And it was designed to provide sustainable career opportunities for local residents, as well as support women and minority-owned businesses across Chicago. Karen has experienced spanning IT leadership, business operations, program oversight, and people leadership. She was most recently the Chief Technology Officer for the Illinois State Treasurer's Office, and prior to that, she helped lead a similar effort focused on workforce at the Illinois Department of Employment Services. So thank you, Karen. Also with us is Fred Goff. He is the founder and CEO of JobCase, which is the only social media platform dedicated to empowering and advocating for the world's workers. He's emerged as a leading voice on issues related to future of work, people first technology, equal access to opportunity, and AI, artificial intelligence, impacts on labor. Today, JobCase is a community platform, has a community of more than 110 million registered members, and it's establishing itself as a platform for amplifying the voices and needs of the American workforce. Thank you, Fred. Next, Stephen Shaw, who's someone I've worked with over the years. He has more than 20 years of experience spanning the private, public, and nonprofit sectors. And he's currently the Community Engagement Director at Verizon for the Chicago market within public policy, law, and security. Prior to that, he was the Interim Executive Director at CLIO, Southwest community-based nonprofit that was very involved in the Chicago One Summer Chicago program. CLIO helped manage an effort to give summer jobs to 300 youth. And that's a program that I'm familiar with from my time in the Chicago Mayor's office. And Stephen's also been in other high-level political roles, including serving as Deputy Chief of Staff to Cook County President Tony Preckwinkle. So thank you, Stephen. And last but not least, James Howards. He's the Regional Senior Vice President of Programming for iHeartMedia Chicago's region and the Program Director for 103.5 KISS FM. James is responsible for all programming and digital operations that deliver a strong return on investment for clients, reaching consumers through on-air, online, social media, personalities, and live events. And he's been with iHeartMedia for some time. He spent 18 years there and has held programming positions across the country. So he brings a wealth of experience to this conversation, and we're delighted to have you, James. So I'd like to just jump right in and pose the first question to the panel. The world's response to the COVID-19 pandemic has resulted in a very rapid transformation of the workplace. Working from home has become the new normal, and we're seeing impacts on sectors where people are interacting with consumers and the safety concerns that brings. How do you see the workforce changing in a post-COVID-19 crisis era? And I'd like to lob that question first to Karen.
She's got her mute on.
Karen, you there?
Let's see here.
Let's go to Stephen.
Great, thank you. And Michael, it's good to see you again. Glad our paths could cross on this panel. And thank you Andrew, for the Urban League for having this discussion and for inviting me. At Verizon, we believe that the workforce is always changing. Certainly there's some elements that COVID has accelerated, but we believe it's ever changing. As a matter of fact, you think about employees such as call centers, and you think that you can't really remotely run a call center, but Verizon had already, even pre-COVID, started enabling call center employees to work from home. And of course, that's not an insignificant financial lift to make sure that all those employees are properly resourced to do their jobs from home. So we believe it's ever changing, but our philosophy is first, make sure that your employees are safe and make sure that their safety needs are met, and employees have to be the first consideration. And once you can really make sure that they're safe, then you want to make sure that they have the ability to optimize their jobs in whatever roles they have. So that's generally our philosophy, and we've certainly started, like I said, pre-COVID, this evolution of working in a dispersed fashion.
What about you, Fred?
Well, I'd echo Stephen's kind words. Thanks for having me. Great to meet you, Michael, and always good to see my friends from the CIUL, and especially what a perfectly poignant conversation on Juneteenth to talk about the number of things around economic empowerment. When you started your question, Michael, you said about work from home's a new normal and what are the trends of COVID going forward, and I see those as related, but a little different. I mean, only 30-some% of the country has the option of working from home. And those tend to be higher educated types of professions. And there's been a lot of good reporting done by the Washington Post and others about where that's leaving either people of color, it's leaving education levels, a lot of things out where it's not an option to work from home. So we are continuing to see inequalities kind of extend during this period. When I think about the second part of your question about what are the trends in a post-COVID world, because in a COVID world, obviously we're working from home and it's pretty difficult for a lot of people. In a post-COVID world, you did a very good job in the beginning saying, consistent with our views, is that all trends are accelerating. So when we talk about future of work trends, some of the dominant themes are about AI or automation replacing jobs. Some themes are about 1099, part-time and contract work taking over for full-time and W-2 labor and what that means. There's concerns about how in a frequent changing of employer marketplace, you have to co-own your employee data. You can't leave it in silos of the bank you worked at or a fast food service or the energy company or whatever it is. And dominantly, as you mentioned, we see a lot of the wealth inequality and income inequality and those things all getting exaggerated in this moment. So all that is accelerating. And that acceleration on the other side is going to happen. The question is, will the people that are in seats of power, whether it's employers or others, are they going to lean into making this a people first transition, where they use AI and automation to replace tasks and not jobs, where we extend benefits to contract workers as well as W-2 workers, where we keep moving forward as Target is in this moment about trying to move towards living wages by balancing out stakeholder versus shareholder or not. So I think that the trends are just accelerating. There's nothing really new that wasn't considered pre-COVID that's not happening post. It's just going faster. And so there's a question of what can individuals do to navigate that? And there's a question of what can either business employers or government or nonprofits do to support people during it.
Thanks, Fred. What about you, James?
Well, other than the fact that cats are now involved with my particular work environment, that's certainly the first big change. But when he wants attention, he wants attention. There's nothing you can do. Happy Juneteenth to everyone, and thank you for having me as well. All right, buddy. Let's just there. For a second. Yeah, we're constantly evolving the way we're thinking, and certainly COVID related the change, and it happened overnight. It was really a unique scenario for radio broadcasters to have to work outside of a studio, and the mindset that we could do that and do it quickly, because, you know, woke up in the middle of the night on a Sunday night and went, oh my goodness, what happens if we can't get back in the building? What happens if somebody has this, and how do I keep my team safe? And then within a week, we had 18 broadcast kits built and ready to go. Just, it was a miraculous job by the engineering team and really the whole iHeart team. And now we have everyone working from their homes. You're hearing broadcasts on all of our 6 radio stations, and they're from closets, and they're from kitchens, and they're from places where they could be safe. So that's really, the first thing was the safety piece of it. The other thing is as we're starting to think about this long term, and I think over time, we feel like we'll be able to bring people back into the fold and into studios and into the technologies that make our jobs easier and more efficient and effective. But we're thinking about culture, because that's really what drives us, is that human connection, that communication that we have with each other, and how are we going to do and build culture around technology in a different way. And we're leaning on, frankly, there's some great resources out there that we're looking at. One is a local resource that you could look up, Windy City Fieldhouse, which does like team building things, and they changed into a digital strategy right away. Like, how can you do team building work and do it through Zoom, through different technologies with video? How do we create an environment where we can see each other, but do it safely at some point in the future? But really just kind of rethinking that human connection that we have with each other. And we have a unique phrase that we like to use at iHeart, and that's radical candor. And we all feel like we could use radical candor and speak that, so we can connect with each other and tell each other honest things. And that's helped build a culture to here. And fortunately, we already had that built, but how are we going to sustain it when we're not around each other? And that's something we're really focused on.
Thanks, James. I'd like to pose the same question to Karen, who's joined us. And the question is about how do you see the workforce changing in the post-COVID era? And I think what's unique about Hire 360 and its focus on the construction industry and on the trades is that a lot of those, so there's the effects of safety on the workers, but there's also the effects elsewhere. What happens to commercial real estate and large downtown construction if we are moving towards more remote working? So I know that's something that's on their minds, and so I'd love to hear Karen give her perspective.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, everyone. I appreciate it. And sorry for the technical difficulties that we're experiencing post-COVID still. So yeah, a couple of things on that. Just for more background, Hire 360 is a startup non-for-profit. We launched officially in January. So going remote in March was definitely hitting us hard. I serve as our Director of Workforce Development along with our IT staff. It's me and pretty much my backpack over here. So scrambling, like we said, on Sunday night, trying to figure out how to get us up and running. Luckily, I have some IT background in my former life, so it really helped to transition quickly. One of the benefits we've actually seen from this is that we serve future apprentices, so those looking to figure out how to get into the construction industry. And we do that by starting out with an orientation that they usually would come to McCormick Place in person. The numbers we've seen have dramatically increased from the attendance, from 15 people to we maxed out, I think, at 80 people this past week, all because we moved to a virtual environment. It's made it easier for people to attend, a lot more flexible. So I think that's going to carry over not just through us, but I think a lot of people that meet face-to-face with clients and things like that will definitely see a change in the added flexibility that the virtual world has provided us. Also lucky that, you know, construction has remained an essential business, and that's been since day one. So they've continued to operate for us, which means the apprenticeship programs have continued to open for us, and that we can continue to refer candidates over there. So that, for us, being in the construction field has been an advantage, being considered essential work. Job sites have definitely had to revisit the way they work. No more meeting up in the trailers. That's a big no of people being locked up in a confined space. They had to limit the shifts that they can do or increase shifts so that they had less people working at one time. My husband's even in the construction industry, so just their business agents from the unions going around enforcing face masks and enforcing all of these things on the actual job site is a huge difference, especially for the construction industry who wasn't used to some of these rules and regulations. So, you know, I think moving forward, flexible schedules will definitely be something new for everyone. You know, it's optional for some people, especially women. I think there can be a really positive effect moving forward with COVID. in terms of the gender bias in the workplace. So hopefully we'll see a positive spin come out on this. Thanks.
Thank you, Karen. So on to the next question. PwC recently published a report called Workforce of the Future. And the focus of the report was on the impact of technologies such as augmented reality and AI on workers and the workplace. It was a survey of 10,000 people to get an idea of their views of what they were thinking about, what they were worried about. And I'll just give a couple of the findings in brief and then ask for a reaction. So 37% of respondents said they were worried about automation putting jobs at risk. And that was an increase from 33% 6 years ago. 74% are ready to learn new skills or to retrain to remain employable in the future. 60% think few people will have stable long-term employment. So there's an anticipation that perhaps people will hold multiple jobs or have side jobs or things like that going forward. And 73% think technology can never replace the human mind. So this shows some anxiety. This also shows some optimism and some willingness to be flexible. I would love to hear views as to how we can ensure in our respective workplaces and the areas that we focus on a human-centric approach to job creation in the years to come. Let's start that one with Stephen.
Great. I think we started hearing some perspectives about this human-centered approach, even in some of the previous morning panel discussions. And I really like this question because it really, to me, the answer kind of feeds into some of the statistics that you cited. At Verizon, we firmly believe that the continuous development of your employees really helps to foster this human-centered approach. And we look at development in a couple of ways. One, through training, and then another through upskilling. The theory being training helps you operate more efficiently in your current role. Upskilling gives you opportunities for new and expanded roles. And so that ongoing training and upskilling, I think is key, as well as some overall leadership development. We have a great leadership development series, which we have deployed not only from the C-suite, but even down to some of the all the managerial levels. And so training, development, leadership coaching, I think that's the what of the answer. And then the how is, how can you do it through technological tools. So we have a huge retail operation. And so we're using things like virtual reality and augmented reality to model scenarios such as customer interactions, how to properly look at store safety and retail safully, and all those things that you want to be able to model as thoroughly as you can before, and hopefully you won't see the real situation, and hopefully you can practice these things before you get to live customers. And so virtual reality and augmented reality are great tools that we are currently using to do some of this training and development, again, modeling scenarios in as real life situations as possible. A few statistics, like we spent as a company over $215 million across the enterprise in training. So we have a pretty substantial, investment in training. I want to read this to get this right. So we had over 3.5 million cumulative hours of training across the Verizon enterprise, and we offered over 24,000 different modes or training offerings. And I think we have about the average Verizon employee engaged in 25 hours per person of training per year. So as you can see, we're really big on training and development, and I think that's the key to really getting at this human-centered approach for employee development.
Thanks, Steve. And I can just say from the state perspective, as we have, our agency receives federal WIOA funds, and we've tried to bring that thinking of you got to go where the workers are. And right now, we have to be remote. We have to be able to deliver training remotely. And over the last couple months, during the course of this pandemic, we've launched a couple new partnerships. There's one with Coursera and a couple of the universities in the state to provide free online training that results in credentialing for displaced workers. We've got a new partnership with P33 and the Discovery Partners Institute to offer computer science certificate programs done remotely at a 50 to 75% discount to workers. And so I think we're starting to scratch the surface of it, and I'm really interested to see how you guys are doing it in the private sector, and how you're approaching it with your own workforces who you have every incentive to invest in over time. I would love to hear Fred's reaction to the question or anything that's been said so far.
Well, one, I hope there's more people like Stephen out there and employers. You can tell he cares about people, and you can tell he's investing in them. I'm training, upskilling. So I salute you. That's freaking awesome, Stephen. We need more of that. I think that how we leverage technology is going to be a choice. Are you going to use it to displace people in jobs, or are you going to use it to empower them? You know, an example is how technology right now, I've done a lot of future of work conferences over the years at MIT's Computer Science and Artificial Intelligence Lab. And it's interesting to watch the progression, because the first year I did it, there was a chart up there that was saying that a machine's ability, machine learning intelligence, to outperform a human radiologist at reading a breast cancer MRI or a scan was getting close. And then the next year it was, oh, it's not there, but it turns out that the machine with a human can do better than the human by itself. Well, now a machine is way better at a human radiologist, regardless of their experience, at actually identifying cancer in these scans. So the question is, what does that mean? Does that mean that we no longer need that person in the radiologist's job? Or does that mean that this person has a whole list of activities they do in a given day, and reading the scan is one thing, and now they don't have to worry about that. They can spend all their time on counseling families on alternative methods and et cetera, all these other skills. So the question is, do companies harness technology to displace people or to displace skills and empower them? And those are choices, right? It's almost like if you're in the 1950s, there were nuclear scientists, and you could choose. Do you want to build a bomb, or do you want to power France? What do you want to do with this? And this is really a choice that we hope employers will keep making. And in the midst of COVID, we're actually seeing a tremendous outpouring of compassion and empathy, which we applaud. It used to be, if you were going to furlough or lay people off, you talk about benefits because you're worried about that, but they were very short-lived. We're actually hearing about outskilling, training people on their way out the door, even though you know your company won't benefit from that. That is a fabulous evolution if we can keep that going, because we're entering a world of the future of work with a shared labor pool, that Stephen's employees might leave Verizon, go to another company, and 4 years later come back to Verizon. We need to think about developing people, whether they stay with you or not. So that's what employers can do. Very quickly though, Michael, you said in yours that people are getting anxious about the future and their jobs. The short answer is they should be. They should be. McKinsey and Oxford have a study out that says 47% of jobs are going to be replaced by AI. But if we leave the concept of AI, I grew up in the Rust Belt with an uncle that worked in a Jeep factory and a dad that was in a Chrysler plant when he started his career. And this is like that scene in Die Hard where Bruce Willis yells to Reginald Johnson, "Welcome to the party." Automation has been displacing jobs for decades, right? It's nothing new. It's just hitting white collar now. And so now at MIT and Stanford, they want to have conferences on things that we've been dealing with in the Rust Belt for years, right? That's okay. We can help them navigate that. And the way you navigate that is it's not new. We don't have to panic. In 1900, 50% of jobs in this country were agriculture. In 2000, 2% were. In 1900, we couldn't see that we're data clerks and call center jobs and all sorts of other things that are created. We tend as humans to see the destructive abilities of technology without seeing what's possible in the constructive ones. So how do we be people-centered? You have to rethink what your job is. You have to think about the skills that you bring to it. And the fancy term in labor markets is adjacencies. You want to say, well, if I'm a cashier, a lot of those skills, I'm working with a machine, I'm interacting with people, that's very consistent with a medical billing specialist. That career is going up, not down. So how can we help people see that what they bring to the marketplace is more about adjacencies and how they navigate a landscape where they have to help control it? Because not every employer is as enlightened as Stephen. And so you have to control your own path forward, which means you want to co-own your data, which means you want to make sure you demonstrate the most important thing I'm sure we'll talk about in this hour more, which is demonstrate the ability to learn. Not just that you learned something. That's awesome, Michael, what you did with Coursera and that. But what's even more invaluable to an employer in this century is not that you just learned something, but that you showed that you can learn new things again and again, because whatever that person is learning today, give it 5 years, right? It's a fast moving economy now, but that capacity to learning. So that's what we can do. Employers can think about how they harness technology to empower people, not displace them. If they are displacing them, have the responsibility to do the training and upskilling. And individuals need to look at adjacencies, not just put a blinders on in terms of their career path. Think broadly about where their skills can be. And there's lots of companies like Jobcase and others that can help with that. And together, the kind of trends that can be daunting and cause anxiety can be wind at your back, where education is free and available online and government officials are working with Coursera to develop it. Can be the ability of switching careers when you feel like the one you're in is stuck, because people are expecting that now. So it can be really positive, but you got to take the reins to control yourself.
Thanks, Fred. And I think when we think about lifelong learning, one thing I often think about is the trades, and that's an area where you're expected to keep up with new methods and new technologies, and it's critical to that profession. So I'd love to get Karen's perspective on this.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's interesting, because I would say the trades in terms of their operations are probably behind the times, the way they operate their offices. But when you're on the front lines, there's definitely a move towards automation. We see it with electricians more than any trade right now. And there is a fear for those people, especially those who didn't take a 4-year degree, came straight from high school, maybe didn't complete high school. So I think something that we're overlooking is definitely education, and how do we ensure that our education today is upgraded. And I think this ties into a lot of the other questions here today that we're going to talk about, but ensuring that education is upgraded to meet the demands of the industry, that we're training children today, students today, and even teachers today to keep up with the changing professions. Because if we don't have the workforce that's prepared for that, there's no way we can keep up with the changing of technologies. And I think, like Fred mentioned, that it's not that scary, right? People are afraid. They're always afraid of replacing jobs, but it's about how to working to complement that. There's always going to be a human approach that people desire. Take, for instance, I feel like we'll all experience this, chatting with someone on Amazon, right? It's really frustrating when they're like, is this what you meant? Is this what you meant? And you're like, no, if it's what I meant, that's what I would have said. Just connect me to a human. And then you get connected. So there's always that balance in between. How do you connect with that human customer service side that we're all seeking? And that's just one example of where AI has complemented it, but it hasn't replaced that human touch that we still need.
Thank you. James, what do you think?
I think it's investment in our humans, right? Investment in our most important assets. I understand, when we take a human-centered approach, which is very much what we do at iHeartMedia, because our personalities, our team members are really our business. People are our business, our audiences and our clients, connecting them are our business. And so the human piece is super important. But I think creation, in terms of job creation, is the optimum word, right? Because technology doesn't create, it executes. Humans create. Humans build things from scratch. Humans innovate and inspire. Technology doesn't do that. So when we're educating our current and future workforces, and we're investing in, like so many people have already mentioned, in terms of training and talking about the future, I think we need to focus on what's next. The innovating through necessity, the using technology but doing it better. One thing that our CEO, Bob Pittman, says a lot to us, and I kind of really love how he describes this, is our product is basically built with math and magic. Right, the math is all the data points and the scores and the technology that we have to create compelling audio. There's a lot of details to it, and for the longest time, humans did all that detail work. Well, machines are better at that, so we have created efficiencies as we've modernized our company, so we can have the human element that creates magic, the creation, the power of the spoken word, the things that really make people feel, the why of what we do. Let's have humans work on that and not do as much of the math, because our computers do a great job of that. And then the other thing is when I mentioned innovating through necessity, and my wife's company, actually, I was